everyone, my name is Max and today I am here with my January wrap up. Sorry, I'm looking not the best. I thought I had the house to myself tonight and so I was gonna do some filming and like get myself all ready, but I have someone staying at my house that I thought was leaving today, but she's actually leaving on Saturday. But I do need to film a video and she is out of the house at this moment. I might have to cut this short. We shall see. But in the month of January, I did finish 12 books. I am 4 books ahead of my Goodreads goal, so I am feeling really good. And I was suffering quite a reading slump, but I'm feeling a lot better and I am feeling ready to read and getting back in it. I did take the last week of January off from reading and vlogging, so that's why you didn't see a vlog this week. And it was just really nice. I did finish all the books that were on my January TBR, so I'm feeling really good about it. But without further ado, let's just get into it. So the first book that I finished was actually a DNF, and this was Court of Swans by Melanie Dickerson. And there was just too much religious undertones. So I'm usually okay with some religious undertones, and I've read books by Melanie Dickerson before, but this was just like every other sentence. It was like, oh, I'm gonna pray to God for a miracle, and God, 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 God. And it was just like, girl, like, how about you step up and do something about it? Like, stop expecting God to like solve all your problems. And she just like really got on my nerves. So I did end up DNFing it. The first book that I finished though was a complete success, and that was Lore by Alexandra Bracken, which I ended up giving a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this. I received an ARC of it from NetGalley and I just fell in love with it. This takes place on Earth, but an Earth that is ruled by the gods. And when 9 gods piss off Zeus, he sends them to Earth, and every 7 years, for a week, they become mortal. And anyone who kills them then becomes a god for the next 7 years until they're mortal again. And sometimes, yeah, they can stay the god if they're able to stay alive, but then they can be killed, and then that person would become that god. And our main character is the last member of her bloodline, and she just wants to like get out of this, but she's met with the real Athena. She's one of the last real gods, and her best friend, and they have to, and Athena offers her revenge against the man who killed her family. I loved this. I thought it was so fascinating, such a great concept. I loved our main character, Lore. She's very like, she's quick to anger, but she recognizes that and she apologizes. She's like, listen, I know it's like a problem, I'm working on it. And I really appreciate that because I feel like in YA, that is rarely the case. They are rarely so in tune with their emotions and ready to apologize. And I loved her and I really liked the romance. The next book that I finished was my October Day book of the month, and that was Rosemary and Roo. And this is kind of, I'm calling it like a female Dresden Files, where that's kind of what I'm hoping it's going to be. Because it's about our main character, October Day, who's like, I don't know, 30 something. She has a family, she's half fae, but she's married to a human man and they've got a child. But one day she's cursed and she lives as a fish for 14 years. When she comes back as a human, she's kind of, her whole life has moved on. Her daughter's grown and she just doesn't really have a place, but she does have some good fairy friends. And when one of them ends up dead, and she is tasked with finding the murderer. Now, it's not exactly like Dresden Files by any means, but I feel like it's kind of that sort of like, I think it's gonna be like a mystery supernatural series. And I just wanted so much from the Dresden Files that it didn't give me. I didn't like Harry Dresden. I found him very misogynistic. So I'm hoping that that's what this series is gonna be. And I think the first one laid some really good groundwork. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I am really excited to see where the series goes. The next book that I finished was my first audiobook of the month, and that was The Answer Is by Alex Trebek, which is his memoir, and he was the host of Jeopardy for like decades. And I actually really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars because I didn't think it was super cohesive. Like, it didn't really feel like a linear plot line, which I do, or story, which I do find in a lot of memoirs authors, because they're not like actual authors, they just jump around a lot. And I did find that to be the case. It didn't really feel like there was like, sometimes like he'll be talking about like one thing in like a chronological order, and then all of a sudden he'll just throw in random stories. And so I didn't really love that, but I did really like it. And I do suggest the audiobook because Ken Jennings, who's the interim host of Jeopardy, is actually like a really good narrator. I didn't think he was going to be, but I actually really did like him. The next book that I read was a short story called Memento by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is a short story that takes place in the Lumine series about Aiden and how he becomes corrupt. Aiden is this AI, and he kind of like takes over this ship, and he is like one of the main characters slash antagonists of the series. I love Aiden. I'm one of those people that even though he's an AI, like I find him very intriguing because he asks questions that like AIs shouldn't be asking, and I just really like him. There was some serious insta-love in this story. I thought it was spanning like months. So like when our main character like falls in love, I was like, yeah, sure, it's probably been like some months. I'm like, oh, it's been a week. It's been a week. And that just like freaked me out. So I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars because I really liked her as a main character. I liked our action. I liked our story. But the insta-love was just too much. Too much. And so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book that I read was another arc, and this was City of the Plague God by Sarwat Chadha. And this is a retelling, or not really a retelling of the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's almost like a sequel because Gilgamesh is a character in this. And this is about our main character who thinks he's just like a regular human, but then a God comes to Earth and tries to kill him because his brother, or he is a human, his brother stole something unbeknownst to his brother or to the family. And so this God is trying to figure out, like, get this thing, I can't say what it is, it's a huge spoiler, and he sets a plague on New York City, which, are you kidding me? Like, I feel like I've read so many books with plagues recently. And of course, like, when I try to bring it up in videos, I forget. But then, like, later, I'll be like, oh my god, this one, this one, this one, this one. There's, like, so many books with plagues. And they all, like, were published or were, like, in the midst of being published before, like, COVID hit. And it's just, like, what are the odds? Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow is definitely one of them by Jessica Townsend. Hollowpox is a plague. This one, there's more, can't think of them, but, and I did really like this. I wish that the main antagonist was more three-dimensional. He didn't really seem to have much of like a good like reason to being a bad guy, and I kind of wish there was more to him because it just felt like he was just creating chaos just to create chaos, and he's not like the god of chaos. If he was the god of chaos, different story, but he's not. And so I just wished more of the antagonist, but I did like our main character. I thought he was really likable and a great hero. This is a middle grade, and I think it was a really fun middle grade, and I ended up giving it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was a little bit of a disappointment, and that was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling that takes place in 1920s Shanghai with another plague. There we go. And this is, there's a plague going around Shanghai, and the two heirs to the two rival gangs have to team up to figure out how to stop it. And I wanted to love this. And it's not even the forbidden love aspect that got to me, because usually it is. I really don't like forbidden love. I really liked our main characters, and I really liked their relationship. It was just like, I don't know, the writing, it was so good for most of it. And then all of a sudden, like the last 100 pages was just like, what? Like, too much happened. I feel like there wasn't enough, like, lead up. And even though this whole book, they're trying to figure out who's creating this plague, when you actually find it out, it's kind of like, there was no signs. There weren't any signs. There wasn't a time where I was trying to guess who it was, because I feel like this one person was supposed to be a red herring, but it was so obviously a red herring that I never actually thought this person was the person creating the plague. So when it turned out to be this other person, I was kind of like, okay, like that makes sense. So that did disappoint me, and I feel like the writing kind of deteriorated as the book went on. And I also think there are just too many points of views. I understand our two main ones, Roma and Juliet, and then I even understand the two, like, lesser ones because they bring something else to the table sometimes. But then, and then I do get, like, we get some point of views of, like, victims. Like, you get, like, the lead up to them getting the disease. But, like, you don't get, like, main ones. Like, Juliet's entire household, like, her staff get it. And it just, I'm like, why didn't we get their point of view? Because we, like, know them. We knew one of the girls who died. And I was like, why didn't we get their point of view? Why do we get some random sailor's point of view? And I think there was something else that annoyed me. I can't remember. So I ended up giving it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I do want to pick up the sequel when it comes out, but I just was really hoping it would be a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read did not disappoint, and that was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And it was amazing. This was phenomenal, and I really thought it was going to be, for multiple reasons, not the least of which being that people who don't really love her writing seem to love this, and that's me. I haven't loved anything by V.E. Schwab. I've either enjoyed it or not even liked it, and so this really was a game changer for me, and if she continues writing like this, she's going to fly to the top of my favorite authors, because this was phenomenal. This is about a girl named Addie LaRue who back in the 1700s makes a deal with kind of the devil to get out of an arranged marriage. She says she wants freedom, but freedom to this devil means total anonymity. So anytime she leaves someone's view, she is forgotten until one day in like the 2000s, 2019, 2017, she finds someone who remembers her, and oh, it was so good. I cried, I laughed, I had so many theories, and I just adored this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think this and Lore are already gonna make my top 10 of the year, and it's only, now it's February, but it was only January, and I just am so happy that I love this. All right, I'm gonna be honest, the rest of the month is pretty much disappointments, and that started with The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. If you've been following me since I started this channel, you will know I have been so excited to start this and read this, and I thought I was gonna love it, and I'm just so thankful I did not buy the sequels because I DNF'd this at 300 and something pages. I just felt like there was no plot. There was no world building. I was reading this just confused the whole time. And I liked our characters. I didn't really care about them. And I just like didn't really understand what was the point of this whole book. And the names of people were too similar. There are so many like DAE and TAG. And I'm just like, who is who? Because they all have the same names. No character's motivation is explained. And I just got really just aggravated. And I realized I was like more than halfway through it. And I just thought, I couldn't care less. I still couldn't tell you what the plot was. I couldn't tell you about the world. So I did decide to put it down, which was heartbreaking, and I was just so disappointed. The next book that I read was The Project by Courtney Summers, and this was, again, another disappointment. This is about a girl who works for a journal, like a journalist company or a newspaper, and she is desperate to figure out more about this cult that her sister is a part of. And her sister hasn't talked to her in years, and she thinks that this cult is basically holding her hostage. I feel like if this had been longer and more drawn out, it could have been a really interesting story. Instead, it was 350 pages and just like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It just happened, like our main character's viewpoint switched like that. It was, she was like, I hate them, I hate them, I hate them, till all of a sudden like, oh my God, I've seen the light. And none of it made sense. Like she was told one thing, he didn't even have proof. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Oh my God, he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm like, girl. And I'm also not the biggest fan of open endings. I was okay with the open ending to Sadie, Courtney Summers' last book that took book 2 by storm, and I loved. And I was really okay with the open ending. This one didn't really make sense. It was a little bit like, 2 went in, 1 came out, and like nothing could be explained except like divine intervention, and I just didn't like it. I was very disappointed, and I ended up giving it probably like a 2.75 out of 5 stars. All right, then the last 2 books weren't disappointing by any means. The next one is my second audiobook, and that was Terrier by Terrier by Tamora Pierce, my Tamora Pierce book of the month, and I actually ended up really liking this. This takes place like centuries before Alana, and our main character is working for the police force, who are called dogs. And Terrier is kind of named for rookies who like make a name for themselves or do something great. And Becca works with these 2 veteran dogs, and they are working in like kind of the slums of the city, and they find out that people are going missing. Children are being kidnapped and are held for ransom. If they're not given the ransom, then the children are killed and left in their beds. And so Becca's best friend's son is killed by this person. And so Becca is trying to figure out what's going on, but along those same lines, her best friend's grandfather is dealing in some very shady business where he's having people mine this very precious stone and then killing them. That's not a spoiler. It's revealed very easily, and the main thing is just trying to figure out how to stop them. I really liked this up until the end. And I would listen to the audiobook, so I couldn't tell you how many pages, but one of the storylines was wrapped up, and I was like, yes, okay, cool. So this other storyline is probably gonna span a couple books, because it could. It's a lot. No, it's wrapped up in like, I want to say like the last half hour of the audiobook, which with audiobook, that's not many pages. And so it just felt so rushed. I was like, wait a second. I was like, this should have spanned a couple books, because honestly, the fact that that wrapped up did not make sense with how fast it happened. And that was just a bit of a bummer. And so I end up giving this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. All right, and then the last book I read in January I own, I don't know where it is, and that was Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. And this, I think I would have liked more if I had been in the right headspace. At this time, I wasn't wanting to read. I was just trying to push through it because I really wanted to read it. And so I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, which I think if I had been in the right mindset, I would have given a higher rating. This is about a guy who used to be part of this legendary mercenary group, and his best friend comes saying that his daughter went into this war and he's sure she's gonna die, and so the band gets back together to go save this man's daughter. I liked this. I loved, they kind of like went trying to collect each person, so you learned more and more about the world as they went. The ending wrapped up too fast. It was like supposed to be this huge like world conflict, and it wrapped up just way too easily. Didn't really work for me, and so maybe I would have left it at a 4 out of 5 stars, but I think if I'd been more invested and was able to ingest more of the story, I would have given it probably a 4.25 or a 4.5 out of 5 stars. By no means a bad rating. I own the second book and I'm very excited to pick it up, but overall, I just thought that it was rushed, like almost every other book that I read this month. I just wanted more of a conclusion. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video.